What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of The Big Break Show with your host. Now, today I have a very special guest, and as you guys can tell, I'm not in my normal studio here. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm actually at my friend Tyson's farm, and I couldn't miss this episode. I was going to reschedule to record at the house. I had to have it immediately so I can put it out with you guys. It's Mr. Scott Hanis, and he's just an absolute genius in terms of building a team and culture and values and hiring and firing. And I had a very different idea of where I wanted this podcast to go. I wrote down a bunch of questions and have him explain certain things, but it ended up going in such a good direction. I think if you listen to this episode the entire way through, you're going to have a really good idea on how to build a really good team for your company, to build out culture, your values, add your mission and your vision, how to lead, how to be a good human, and some of the key nuggets he gives to be able to implement in your company or just to become a better leader overall and a personal human being in your personal relationships. If there's one episode I've recorded out of everything we've ever done, if you haven't listened to all of them all the way through, I suggest this be the one that you listen to all the way from start to finish. With that being said, as always, I love you guys. I thank you for listening to the podcast. If you enjoy these, leave a comment below. Give a like, give a follow. I do this so that I can learn, but I also want to put this out publicly as I learn, you can implement this stuff as well. It's how we learn and grow and do things together. And I see you guys as somebody that I can share my knowledge with. So hope you enjoy the episode. See you inside.
Welcome to The Big Break Show, your go-to podcast for real estate investing, business acquisition, mindset, and lifestyle.
Scott, man, I'm happy you're on the show. Welcome to The Big Break. Thank you for being here today, dude. I'm kind of pumped to have this conversation with you because you have some really direct knowledge that I think our listeners can benefit in terms of like hiring, firing, culture, values, and a lot of the stuff that people don't talk about here, or not here, but in business in general, is compliance in terms of HR and making sure that people are doing things correctly within their business. So thanks for coming on, man. I'm pumped that you're here.
Thank you so much, Rafa. I appreciate it. And thanks for everybody for listening. Let's have an amazing conversation. Let's go.
Yeah, man. So before we get started, tell everybody who you are. Since this is your first time on the show, I want to know what you're about. Why should the listeners go through this entire hour-long episode? We can go from there.
So I want to give as much value as I can. So I'm going to probably be a little long-winded, but so my name is Scott Hanis. My wife and I own a business called Fortitude HR Solutions. We do two main aspects to our business. We do HR business consulting, then we do recruiting. The business consulting and HR consulting gets into everything from building organizations, scaling companies, growing organizations. We're not like your typical HR consulting company that's going to write employee handbooks. We don't want to process payroll. So we stay away from those things. But we like to help organizations grow. If you're doing $1 million in revenue, how do you get to $5 million? How do you get to 10? How do you get to 20? We do a lot of stuff with that. We also help organizations with doing due diligence and helping organizations do acquisitions. I've got a private equity background, which I'll talk about here in a little bit, but really working on that and scaling and building teams. That's another big thing that we do. We help organizations create culture and, what are your values? Like, what do you drive? Like your purpose, your mission, your vision, all that stuff is your business foundation. If that's broken, it's just like in real estate, the deals, like things crumble in your house foundation or apartments or whatever, Airbnbs. So you got to make sure that that stuff is sound. Then you can talk about it. You can build your pipeline. So it's so important. We help with strategic planning. We do a lot of executive coaching. We do a lot of leadership training. That's some of my favorite stuff that we do. And then we do some of the monotonous HR stuff, employee relations. If there's a situation, how do you handle those things to make sure you're complying within the law, and talking about documentation and the importance of that. And then, business consulting, we help put together standard operating procedures in businesses. We help define key performance indicators like metrics of how to drive things, help people hold, their team members accountable. What does onboarding look like? We develop organizational charts, organizational structure. So we do a lot of that, the fun parts of what I consider business. We'll review profit and loss statements, P&Ls, and figure out like where are the gaps, where are the gains, where are you potentially missing the mark? Do you have a financial budget in place? If so, like what's the gap or the variance and why do you have it? And then we do a lot of stuff with like meeting structure. I find a lot of business owners don't know how to run meetings properly. So I'm a huge fan of like daily huddle meetings, weekly team meetings, one-on-one meetings are critical. If you don't communicate, here's the best nugget I'm going to tell you right now in the opening. People either live up or live down to expectations, Rafa, right? But if we don't clearly communicate and explain those things and give clear direction on that, this is my proverbial mirror here I'm looking at. I failed everybody. as the leader. I've got to be very clear and intentional with that. So we do a lot of that in helping clients set up their organizations for success. On the other side of the business, we do full service recruiting. We're recruiting positions, anything from, an administrative assistant all the way up to a CEO. We kind of stay away from some of the hourly positions. We work more on salary, full-time positions. We don't do 1099. We don't do commission only. There's just too much turnover, and people typically don't understand the laws and the rules and regulations behind 1099 and W-2. So we just work on full-time W-2 employees. And our approach is not unique from other recruiting firms or headhunters. Our job is to go out and do targeted recruiting and find the best talent for the positions. We're not going to just send you a bunch of resumes and bodies. We want to know, what are your pain points? Why do you have the position open? Tell us about your culture. Let us sell it. Like, recruiting is selling. You hear always be selling in business. I'm always about always be recruiting, always be hiring. Build your pipeline. It's so important, just like it is in sales. Build your pipeline. So we do that, and we fill positions, again, from administrative assistant all the way up to a CEO. We work with a number of different industries, a lot in real estate, but also in manufacturing, healthcare, professional services, etc. So that's the two big components of our business. We started our business in June of 2019, so we're coming on 7 amazing years. We started the business in June of 2019 because of our mutual mentor and friend that we know, Tim Bratz. Tim and I are neighbors here in Cleveland, Ohio, and Tim asked me to come in and help him with his organization. During Thanksgiving break, I was working for a private equity firm at the time out of Dallas, Texas, and Tim's like, "Hey, can you help me put some structure in the business?" They didn't have job descriptions. They didn't have values really aligned. They didn't really have some, goals and stuff like that were broken out. We like to use the SMART goal format. So we got into that with Tim. And after spending 2 days with the team, Tim's like, "Scott, you got to quit your job." And so Tim gave me a lot of confidence and just, again, of encouragement to quit my job and take this huge leap of faith. I was used to making a very large salary with stock options. I walked away from a big payday at the private equity group. And then I also, I'm a faith-filled person, Rafa. So I had to pray. I had to talk to my wife, get her support, and then also talk to my pastor and my parents. And after about 6 months of praying and just thinking about, is this the right move for our family, decided to quit my job and start Fortitude HR Solutions with my wife, Laura. So we've been at this for 7 years. We went through the fun of having COVID happen in March of 2020. And with that, we went from doing 32 roles on March 16th of 2020 down to about 4 roles by the end of March of 2020. So, wow. It shut down a lot of business, a lot of commerce, and people were afraid, and so they stopped hiring. So our business really pivoted a lot from doing recruiting to doing more consulting work during that time. How do you go through those transitions? How do you handle change management? We do a lot of, training, as well as we do a lot of work with clients on change management. And then prior to this, is this too much? I'm going off on a huge tangent.
No, please keep going. This is actually really, really good.
Okay. And then prior to that, I worked for a private equity firm for 2 years. I was a vice president of HR, responsible for about 1,200 to 1,300 employees, depending upon seasonality in the business. And my job was to improve functionality, improve profitability, look at headcount, cost save. So one of the initiatives I was tasked with in my first 6 months of the job is, how do you save $500,000 in health insurance costs in a growing company? So that was one of my initiatives. I was able to hit that. So that was a good win. But, after being there for about 2 years, and meeting Tim and opening my world to entrepreneurship and then believing in me, I'm like, all right, if you don't bet on yourself, no one's going to bet on you. So took this huge leap of faith and started the business. Prior to working at the PE firm as a VP of HR, I did international work in HR. So I was headquartered out of the United States, but I spent a lot of time in Mexico and Brazil, understanding Brazil and Mexico's employment laws, understanding culture. We worked with a lot of companies in other locations in London, England, and Germany, and Italy. And so my job was to understand culture, understand, again, how do we put best practices, systems, processes in place? How do we build teams? How do we, again, get the results that we're looking for as an organization? And during that time, I did a lot of due diligence. I did a lot of merger and acquisition work. I was responsible for being on an M&A team, merger and acquisition team, where we went around and looked at different assets and potential acquisitions in the United States in conjunction with like a Grant Thornton or an EY. And I would lead the due diligence for the HR section of that team. And then there I also opened up a sales office in Troy, Michigan, because we were a big automotive supplier. We also opened up a capital investment office out of New York City. So I'm very involved. My boss, Kevin, who I love, have a lot of admiration and respect for. He knew my personality, Rafa, is if I get bored, you got to give me more to do. So I've always probably been a little bit of a workaholic, and like I'm very driven by hitting goals. And so with that, Kevin really empowered me and taught me a ton. He's still somebody I talk to, still a mentor of mine.
So, dude, all right, I'm going to stop you for a second. This is probably one of the best intros I've gone from anybody on the show, because you went into a lot, and there's a lot to unpack there that I'm sure a lot of the listeners don't understand or even know what the heck we're talking about. One of the first questions that I was going to ask you to start the conversation was, why did you leave corporate HR to start Fortitude and then to go into help Tim? From what I'm understanding is, you took the leap of faith to help Tim, which is what kind of helped you get out of the HR corporate world to start your own company to help other entrepreneurs do this. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's that. And, and I won't get into all the details, but there's some things in the corporate world, when it's all about money, that's great. It's got to be about your people, right? And so I'm a big people person. Not that you give somebody 1,000 chances, but again, if we're not clearly communicating, again, people either live up or live down to expectations. If we don't clearly communicate that, that's not on that employee or team member solely. That's a lot on that leader. So I saw a lot of that, and, I can make a bigger impact and help way more people if I work with business owners that are, smaller to medium-sized companies and help them grow and scale. I look at this as a personal responsibility to be able to help people. I'm a helper by nature. Again, I'm a faith-filled Christian person. I want to help as many people as possible. And if I'm working for one company, I'm limited by who I'm helping. If I work for a lot of companies and I can impact wisdom and knowledge and share the information, Rafa, I've never been somebody that's like, I want to keep everything close to the chest and not share what I know. Yeah. I want to share and impart wisdom. I want to help people do it the right way. I want you to avoid a lot of the pitfalls that I see in organizations. And so Tim was a huge leap of faith. Tim also gave me, again, probably one of the best things anybody could do for me. And Tim said, Scott, he goes, if you can't pay your bills, I will make sure your bills are paid. Like, huge thing. And so again, I have so much admiration and respect for Tim. He's a close friend of ours, the family as well, and just someone I have a lot of admiration for. So shout out to Tim Bratz.
Yeah, I actually had him on the show a couple seasons ago, and it was a fantastic podcast. So, there's a few things I'm going to touch on here. I took a bunch of notes, and I started culture, values, mission, vision, team building. As short-term rental real estate investors, which is a big part of our listeners here, midterm rental investors and people that are trying to get into this realm of starting a business, a lot of people actually start in the weeds doing all the work themselves, as all entrepreneurs do. And we go through it and we grind and we grind and we grind until we're so overwhelmed that we hire by reaction, not by what we're actually needing or being ahead of it or thinking ahead of what we're going to need to fill a specific role. And again, that's just because it's what we do. At the time that I need a certain role to get fixed for the help to take it off my plate because I'm just being overwhelmed, that's when I go and make a real hire. So you, being from the world of HR and hiring and firing and team building and everything you just kind of unpacked here on the show, what's the first HR hire that, let's just say, a short-term rental or a real estate operator should make, and when? And it doesn't have to be necessarily HR. Let's talk about like an actual hire or their first hire that you think would be the person or a key person that they need to bring on board to help them actually grow and scale the business if they plan on growing and scaling the business.
Yeah, if you want to grow and scale your business, to me, like the best answer I can give you, Rafa, is all about your time. I value time the same way I value money, right? There's a great quote by Harvey McKay. He is a time management person, but he said, time is free, but it's priceless. And once you use it, you can never get it back. So to me, I look at my time and quantity of like value of how I spend my time. So if an item is a $10 item, $100 item, or $1,000 item, I want to map out how I spend my time for an entire week. So we do an exercise with our clients that does this. And then after that, we want to analyze and Tim does it a little bit differently. Tim likes the frowny face and the smiley face.
Yeah.
I like the dollar amount. And then from that, where am I spending my time? Where's my genius zone? Where's my strongest points? And then I want to take the lower level tasks. Not that they're not important, but I want to hire somebody to do that. So normally it's typically an assistant, right? Especially you're starting and growing and building a company. When we meet with new business owners, it's looking at what is their business plan? What is their strategic plan? who's doing all the roles on the, on the seat or on the bus, as Jim Collins talks about. What does that org structure look like? And normally the first hire I'm always going to recommend it as assistant. Can somebody that can book your flights, if you're going on travels, you're going to visit properties, can they book your hotels? Like that saves you time so you can focus on having good conversations, raising money, looking at deal flow. That's the highest and best use of your time versus, again, scheduling those things, scheduling your calendar. If you trust the person well enough, you can have them read through your email, categorize it, prioritize it. That's another best use of the time. If it's responding to different messages, once they know your tone and how to reply, to me, again, the assistant is the highest bang for your buck. It buys your time back, but it also allows you to still grow the organization. And then if you had to ask me, the second hire I probably would make is, how do I generate revenue for the business? It'd be some type of way to generate revenue for the business. Could be a salesperson, could be a marketing person, but who's going to help me generate the business, especially if that's not my forte. If I don't love that and I don't love the sales aspect, but I love, the people, I love the operational aspect, or I love looking at the data and the numbers, I'm going to go hire somebody that can bring me lead flow, right? Or deal flow. That's going to be more important to me.
60% of operators added AI last year to their business, and you'd think it'd be dynamic pricing. That's the sexy one. It wasn't. The biggest win across the board, hands down, was guest communication through AI. Makes sense. If you've ever ran this business, the messages literally never stop. Check-in time, Wi-Fi password, is there a blow dryer? How do we park? Always the same questions over and over. I added HelloHost to handle that layer for me now. It runs on top of my property management software, and it responds to guests so good, not sounding like a robot at all, which was my biggest concern about using AI, the AI slop through messaging. This wasn't some fancy AI pricing algorithm, something simple that helped escalate our business and save all of our team members a lot of time. If you're still running 1, 2, or even 3 short-term rentals right now, and you're still responding to messages or relying on your PMS to answer them for you, you're probably leaving a lot of time on the table and a lot of really good reviews on the table. I suggest you check this out. I don't want to take too long on this one. This question that I'm going to ask you, because it ties to the dollar value and the amount. I think one of the things that a lot of people struggle with is the fact that they're going to have to give up a large chunk of the revenue or their paycheck, so to speak, to implement someone, to take their time away from the business to keep on the personal level. And a lot of people don't want to do that. What do you think would be, and this is a very broad question, you might not be able to answer it exactly or give exact numbers, but what would be the time or number in terms of revenue or distance of a business where someone can go, okay, I think I could hire somebody full time? Because if I look at this, if I go through my time, I go, okay, this is $10, this is $20 in terms of my time, but I'm not large enough yet to actually bring someone on board full time with taxes and, employment taxes, and especially here in California that are super crazy. When would somebody be like, I think it's time to actually do this? Or should we reach out to someone like you and go, hey, can you help me out here? Like, what would be like just something quick that you can tell the viewers and listeners that somebody might need to wake up and make this decision now?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a mindset thing first, so Rafa, right? Again, like when you hire somebody, let's say you're hiring an administrative assistant, like job title matters too, what you call the position. If you say executive assistant, people have in their mind in the job search and what you're going to get from like people that are applying, they might want $75,000 to $100,000. You say administrative assistant and the job description, the job duties are such where it still makes sense, you might be able to hire somebody for $50,000 to $70,000. That's number one. So mindset and job title is important. The second thing is you don't have to have all that money in the bank account day one. You should have some of that money in the bank account from a cash flow standpoint to make sure you're covering the expenses. But if you can't afford to hire the W-2 full-time person, which is what I would always recommend versus hiring, I want somebody, again, it depends on your personality too. Are you able to work with people remotely? If you can, you could do virtual assistants. They're great, but you got to be very intentional. You got to be very clear. You got to provide training and expectations. But that's also the same thing if you hire somebody in person and they're W-2. So again, virtual assistants you can hire somebody at a fractional of the cost. You could hire consulting companies or fractional companies to help you do some of this work. You could also look at, I don't love 1099 independent contractors because most business owners do it wrong. They don't understand when you're a 1099 person, they should have their own LLC or business. You should have a, independent contractor agreement that talks about the scope of work, how you're going to pay them, how you can break the agreement on both sides, the independent contractor and the business. You should have a certificate of insurance. And I'm old school because I worked in, a lot of places where this was rampant, but like I would do a background check and maybe even a drug screen, right? So again, depending upon the state in which you're in, you got to look at what the laws are. And if you can and can't do it, California is a fun one, as you know. So you got to be careful that you're, operating within those compliance lines. But to me, again, I think we make it so hard, and we have this fear that we won't make the hire because we're afraid of what it's going to cost. If you get the right person in the seat and you onboard them and you give them clear expectations and you give them training, it's going to take you time to train them the right way into your expectations. But what do you gain from that? So somebody that's an assistant, Rafa, I'm looking at, they should be able to help generate for a return on investment minimum of 1 to 2 times what you were paying them. And you should see that back pretty quickly. So it depends again, like if you're able to not spend the hour booking your flights and your hotels and like those kind of things and reservations for rental cars, and you have that hour to go close one deal, how much money can that person generate for you from a revenue standpoint?
Yeah, I love that. That was put so well, man. I mean, there's nothing even to add to that. I had some thoughts behind the 1099 deal because I have a lot of 1099 cleaners that work for us, but they don't work for us exclusively, and we have to be very careful with that in California. Yep. You answered that perfectly, man. So let's pivot a second, because one of the things I really want to focus on is culture, values, team building, mission, everything that we talked about up to this point. I've been public about this over the last 6 to 7 months. I blew up my entire virtual assistant team that I had. I was traveling. I wasn't paying attention. I was just assuming that they'd handle everything for me all the time. And after it kind of went down, I was like, okay, I'm big on taking ownership of everything that happens, right? As leaders, we have to be able to step up and go, okay, obviously it's not their fault. It's my fault. I have this conversation with people all the time when they're like, oh, my team can't do this. And I'm like, is it the team, or did you just not properly take the time to train these people or teach them what they need to be doing? And a lot of people don't want to really understand that. They don't want to take it and take ownership and go, yeah, you're probably right. It was me. And so I learned that the hard way, right? To say, I learned it the hard way, and it caused a lot of people to leave. And so I had to really take ownership and start implementing something that's going to keep the company together. I've heard you speak a few times at the Legacy Mastermind events about culture, values, and then we did a team building thing, and you've gave some really good resources for me to work off of, which is why I was really excited to have you on here. So what I ended up doing is I created a culture. I created the culture of the company and the values of the company. And I want you to explain this really quickly, because when I bring this up to people, they just look at me and they go, yeah, we've heard this before, but they don't really understand how important it really is to actually do this. So one thing I do every single Monday without fail, when I have my team meeting, every Monday at 9 a.m., I have my team meeting, and the first thing I do is actually ask how everybody's week is, and we have a nice personal talk to catch up. But once we start the meeting, the first thing I do is I review our values. That's the first thing we go, right? And our values are based around the culture of how we want to treat the customer experience and to make everything better for short-term rentals, because I run a short-term rental management company in-house. And so it's like, off the top of my head, it's like, own it, fix it, don't repeat it, learn and adapt faster, celebrate the wins, communicate like a human. There's a few more. I brought them up before, but we review them, and then I give examples on things that have happened in the past that are perfect for that. I want you to explain to the listeners what culture really means and how values tie to the culture of the company so well before we get into mission and vision.
So culture, I mean, it's why people show up. Why do they work for you? Again, culture is part of your competitive advantage. It's how you become an employer of choice. Again, how you build your pipeline, where people want to come work for you versus you trying to go find people to work for you. So again, it defines your why, it defines your purpose, the mission, the vision, the values, everything. I love what you said, Rafa. Like, that to me is critical. So you can't just put values together, throw them up on a wall, put them on your website. You got to live, breathe, talk about them, lead by example. That's a great way. So when we create core values and culture, and we look at mission statements and vision and values for clients, we're looking at how do you implement these? Because we can create them all day long. That's number one. Number two, how do you implement it? So we give typically like a 1.5 page, 2-page document on how to implement these things. That's one of the best practice tips we always give. Bring them up as many times as possible. Every single team meeting, you need to bring up the core values. And then I would ask the team even, what does this value mean to you? How do you live out this value, right? One. So that's a good one. Another thing, I love that you have the team, you give examples, but even have them like call out other team members of what they witnessed in the past week of someone else doing to step up or live out those core values. That way it gets the team involved. When we do a core values exercise for culture, and again, Rafa, you and I could sit in a room and create these. If you've got a team of people, have other people on the team be in that room with you. So we lead an exercise where we go over, what are our core values? Why are they important? And then we get it from there. We ask about 12 questions or so, and I ask everybody to participate. No wrong answers. I want to hear repetition. If I don't, if somebody says, for example, teamwork only once in those 12 questions, I know it's not important. But if they repeat it, 7 times, teamwork should probably be somewhere in there, some way, shape, or form, a core value, or mention in how we live it out. The next way in which you take the values and the culture to the next level is standards of excellence, guiding principles. How do you live those things out? Values are great. They're good statements, but they're lip service until you have action that's behind them. And then you could go even crazier with culture. We have this company clients that we do this. They'll do like an employer of the quarter, and like for each of the core values and how they live it out, they get a little reward, a token. You don't have to do anything crazy monetary. It could be an extra PTO day. It could be a bonus if you have got a team of virtual people. We're going to give you a bonus, a discretionary bonus. So there's all different ways you can do it to engage the culture. But again, if you're coming to work today, like most people get a case of the Mondays, right? Like they don't want to show up to work. That was made famous from the movie Office Space, but they don't want to come to work. But why do they get up? Why do they come to work every day? How do they provide the best possible experience for your customers, your clients, your other team members? Again, customer service and client service is not just, external with your external customers. It's also internal. It's how we treat our team. It's how we treat our, other people that we work with. If we treat them lousy, but we treat our external customers great, like there's always a disconnect. There's going to be chaos. There's going to be friction, and you're going to have people leave. You hear all the time, people don't leave their job. They leave their boss or they leave the culture. It's really toxic. Right. It's not a great workplace. So how do we one up the competition? How do we get better? We do things like, I think every business should do a SWOT analysis at some point. We did this in one of the exercises that I led at Legacy. Like, what are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? What are our opportunities? And what are our threats for our own business? And then if we had to pick our 3 closest competitors, who are they? What do they do? And what do we know about them? Not that we want to duplicate. And like, as Trevor says, who MCs our Legacy events, comparison is a thief of joy. I don't want to be like them, but what can I learn from them? Either good or bad. So I don't have to make the same mistake in my organization.
So, it's something that's really cool. As you were talking, I pulled up all of the values and stuff. And one of them that we did together as a team that I started pitching ideas and said, hey, what do you guys think we should be doing based on everything we've been talking about? And the one that we came up as a team together was thinking solutions. And that was like, I gave the ones that I thought would be important. And then I like the idea of asking, what does this value mean to you? I've actually never done that. But we did work together to create one that all of us together can work for. Because one of the things I'm always telling people is like, look, I don't want somebody that I have to pinpoint and tell you how to solve a problem or do something. I want you to come with me with the solution, and then I can give you my feedback on what you came up with. I always bring that up over and over and over. And one of them was like, why don't we come up with like something around that? I said, well, what do you guys think about thinking solutions? And everybody was like, I think that's a fantastic one. And now we literally, truly live by it. If you have a problem, I want you to solve it or come to me before, and I can tell you, hey, and if you did it wrong, what's the worst that's going to happen? We'll fix it, right? The business isn't going to crumble and the world isn't going to end. At the very least, it's going to tie to another value, which is own it, fix it, don't repeat it, right? You're going to make the mistake because you thought in a way of thinking in solutions. You tried to solve the problem. It was a mistake. Now you own the mistake. We're going to fix it, and I don't want it to ever happen again.
There you go.
You know what I mean? And I think that's fantastic. I think everything you're talking about is awesome. One thing I don't do, dude, is a mission and vision for the company. Now I have a mission and I have a vision that I do with personally with like Lorena, and we do on a personal level. And we sit down and we do the goal setting. But now that I have you here, let's talk about that a little bit, because I've never actually done that or implemented it. And now I'm thinking, why the heck have I not? It's kind of silly of me. So what are your thoughts on that, and what would you advise around that?
Yeah, so to me, the simplest way I can say about the mission statement is like, what's the why? Why does your business exist? What's the purpose of the business, right? So it's figuring out why the business exists, and then the vision is like, where do you want to take the business long term? Do you want to grow? Do you want to scale? Do you want to do multiple things? Do you want to give back to the community? What type of legacy do you want to leave? Those are things that will help with that. And then you, as the business owner or the CEO or whatever your title is, you should be sharing mission, vision, values. And if you take it further with culture, standards of excellence, every single team meeting, you should have it in your social media. You got to live it out. You got to talk about it. You got to breathe about it. So if you're doing those things, again, people will get on board. It will help you with attracting the right talent. It will help you with retention of your team. It will also, if you do it the right way, Rafa, it will help attract other investors, other people that want to do deals with you and partner with you. Because again, it becomes part of, like Tim teaches this with Commercial Empire, but like it becomes a part of your credibility. It's your integrity. It's who you are. It's your brand, right?
Yeah.
And so when I played baseball in high school, I had a coach, Mitch Garish, who I love dearly. But he said, Scott, when you wear that Letterman jacket and you go to a mall, you don't act like an idiot. You represent the school. You represent the baseball team. You represent me as your coach. You represent yourself. So if you're acting like an idiot at the mall, like think about what you're doing and what does that say about the brand. So that gets into more with the culture and some of that stuff, Rafa. But I think that's the simplest way I can say mission and vision. And like you can get your team involved with that. Normally it's typically leadership that comes up with the mission and the vision, versus the team. But again, you could do it any way you want based upon how collaborative you want to be, how close knit is your team. It can be a little bit challenging when you've got, family members. If you got a family owned business, that can be challenging because I've got this opinion. I've got this opinion. You got to be able to do conflict resolution. So we do a lot of training around that with clients. But how do you handle those things? How do you find, the win-win-win, right? You let person A talk, you let person B talk, somewhere in the middle, we find the solution and we move on. And I want to take a quick note and go back to what you said about the solutions. I love what you said there. One of my former mentors and bosses said, Scott, don't come to me with the problem unless you've got 3 solutions. I don't want you throwing up on my desk. I want you to give me 3 solutions. To your point, let's talk about it. Let's figure it out. That will help me trust you. And then I can empower you to make the decision. And then to your point, if you make a wrong, decision or something goes wrong, to your point, how do you own it, fix it, and never repeat it, right? How do you learn from it? Most people don't do that. They want everything to be perfect. Guess what? Business is not perfect. Life is not perfect. It sucks. As an entrepreneur, it goes up and down, up and down. What am I doing today? Same thing in life. You're going to get, I'm going to say, I shouldn't say that, but you're going to get hit in the face. How do you get back up? How do you not continue to feel sorry for yourself? You don't want to pay this pity party. How do I continue to move on? And again, if you've got a team, this is the wonderful thing about business. If you've got a team, you don't have to do it by yourself. If you're a solopreneur out there, you're carrying all that burden on yourself. If you're having a lousy day, tell people you're having a lousy day. I need help with this. Nothing wrong with being vulnerable. Yeah. So I'm going off on a huge tangent. Sorry.
No, dude, I'm letting you speak because you're giving so much good feedback because I wanted to talk about your business as a whole, but this ended up becoming something that people can really take and implement it into their company right now, which is huge value for listeners. I mean, and for me as well. I mean, I like to have these podcasts because I like to ask questions of what's actually happening and how can do things. And, there's so many things that are going on. And I mean, you're an absolute expert at this. I mean, I just took this out. The 3 solutions is fantastic because if I have 3 solutions, there might be help in terms of not even making the mistake because we solve it together. I think that that's really, really good. So how do you set the training and expectations when you're talking to like a team member in terms of what they want to do? Actually, you know what, Scott? Hold on a second. Before we get to that question, I want to touch on what you said about the mission and the vision. I always write down takeaways on these podcasts, and I talk about them at the end of the episode. And dude, you're just giving me so much stuff because I'm on social media all the time. Mm-hmm. I mean, constantly. Like I post all kinds of stuff, but I've never posted about the culture, the values, the mission. Why is the company around? It's just, how do you do this in the company? You can succeed by doing this. And, 3 ways to not mess up. And but why have I not ever posted about my actual culture and values and talked about how great my freaking team is? I mean, I do talk about how great my team is all the time, but what's the why in the business long term? Something that we have that Tyson and I are doing is we're doing what we call the $1 Million Club. We're talking about creating a group where we can get a good group of just really good, solid people together till we can give away $1 million a year. And this is something I can totally bring the team in and align with it and give them an actual mission and provide the vision of where we're going and why we're so stuck to this. And, if they align, awesome, and if they don't, then we have to talk about it. Well, what's the problem? What is it? Why do you not like about this? You get feedback and stuff like that. But I wanted to really touch on that because, I mean, dude, the mission and the vision deal, I've always known how important it was. And I've never actually put any emphasis behind it because I was more worried about the culture and the values. And they touch together. You can't have a good culture if you don't have everybody working in the same direction. You have people going in different directions, which is why I'm reiterating what you're saying so people truly grasp how important this really is when you're building an internal team. Okay, back to my question about trainings and expectations. I want to know exactly when you hire someone, let's just say you already hired someone. We've already went over the hiring part, not in detail, but you gave some really good feedback on that. But let's say you hire someone and it's time to train and set expectations. At the end of the episode, Scott, I go, I had a big takeaway. I'm telling you, you've given me so much, but I'm gonna give you the takeaway right now. people live up and live down to the expectations.
Mm-hmm.
I just had a conversation with a friend of mine, and you tell me if this is wrong. I'm getting sidetracked here from my actual question, but you tell me if this is wrong. I always tell people, I actually never, I was telling her, and I tell people this all the time, but I'm like, I actually never have expectations with anybody, because if I set an expectations, I'm just setting myself up for disappointment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's maybe a bad way to look at it, because I love the fact that you say people will live up and live down to the expectations, but I don't know, do they go hand in hand? What are your thoughts on that really quick? This is my takeaway from the episode, by the way, the people live up and live down to the expectations.
Here's my thoughts on that. If you didn't clearly communicate what your expectations are, then I think that's a you problem. And I'm going to tell you why. So
I love that.
It goes back to, like, I'll give you a great example. That goes back to intentional communication. Okay.
Yeah.
If you say to one of your team members, can you please get this done by the end of the day? Okay. And you want something done. Let's say it's a report that needs to be done. They get it done by the end of the day, but they might be a remote team member. They might be in a different state, different country, different time zones, whatever. Their end of the day might be different than your expectation. If I say, hey, I want this done by 12 o'clock Pacific Standard Time or Eastern, whatever time zone you're in, and then they don't hit that, you've clearly given them the expectation. To take it one step further, this is how I expect the report to look. I need this, this, and this on there. If you don't provide that up front, Rafa, they're already going to fail you, right? You're already going to be disappointed. And then you're not going to trust them. And you're going to have this like broken thing where you're like, well, this person's not any good. I've got to give up on them. I got to replace them. Well, hold on a second. Did you clearly, again, set the expectation? Did you communicate it? Right. That's where I think's most important. And then two big, really important questions we should be asking every hire. And I do this in the interview process too, as we do a lot of interviewing. But how do you like to learn, and how do you like to communicate? Our jobs as leaders is to meet people where they're at. So if you've got somebody that's more of a visual learner and that's how they learn, we got to have, diagrams and charts and like flows and workflows so they understand. If they're more of an auditory, we need step-by-step instructions. You do 1, you do 2, you do 3. You can use great tools like scribe.com is a great tool to help you with writing standard operating procedures. You also should have it written down in written form. You should also record it either in a Loom video, Zoom video, whatever recording method you want. But to create those like training work instructions or standard operating procedures, you got to meet people where they're at. And then communication, this is a whole other topic we could talk about at some point, but you got different generations in the workplace. You have different working styles, maybe even different countries, different states. People, you have different life experience. So you got to find out how they like to communicate. Some people are not comfortable, being on the phone all the time. They'd rather text. They'd rather do Slack messages. If you're going to do that, does your message make sense to them? Do they know what the expectation is? As leaders, are we asking, does this make sense? Do you understand the expectation? Have we given them clear guidelines of this is what we want in order to be successful? So we need to do that. I think the team members or our team, they should be asking, if I do this, is this going to make it successful for you? Right? That's something the team should be doing. But you need to clearly lay out what you're looking for so they don't disappoint you. Because if you're already thinking they're going to disappoint you because you didn't give them clear expectations, again, that's people either living up or living down to the expectation.
Yeah, I should probably clarify, because I guess I used that in the wrong term. The conversation I was having was more on a personal level of like what we expect from like friends and family and stuff like that. And I'm glad we're talking about this now, because you're 100% correct. One of the things I do now, I realize now that you've brought this up, whenever I hire someone, like let's say, for example, a cleaner, I set the expectation up front. And I'll give you an example right now. A lot of cleaners will come in and clean your apartment. It just is a short-term rental operator, and they'll get in there, and the place is usually left in pretty good shape by someone that was respectful. I guess I was respectful. And they come in and they knock it out super fast, and they're done in 45 minutes to an hour. But then they come in and there was a really dirty gas which has destroyed the place, and now they have to work a little harder, and then a fee comes attached to that. And I'm like, wait a second. I don't pay you less because it was easy to clean. Why am I going to pay you more if it was a little bit dirtier? And so that took me a long time to learn. And so now I set that expectation up front. Listen, I'm going to pay you whatever you want to get paid, your fair rate. But it's going to go whether it's really clean or it's going to be really dirty. Now, if there's like throw up and a bunch of disgusting things, that's within reason. We charge the guest, you get paid. But I do set the expectation up front. And I guess I should have clarified that, because this was a conversation we were having on a personal level. But now I'm curious, what do you think about that in terms of a personal level? Now, let's step away from HR for a second, and let's step away from business. Let's talk about personal in this aspect of people live up and live down to the expectations. And if you set an expectation, are you setting yourself up for disappointment? Because it's very difficult to set expectations with a family member, right? Or your significant other. or one of your best friends. You can't just go, hey, listen, these are the expectations for us to be friends and for us to be together. So I'm curious what you think. And look, really quick, to give you context, the reason I say is because if I'm hanging out with someone or I'm in a relationship with someone, it's because I want to be in it, because it's something I want to do, not because I'm expecting a give or take type of deal. But I'm curious on what you think in terms of that really quick.
So this is why I love what I do, because everything that I do for other clients and businesses, you can apply this all to your personal life. So when we do like a lot of executive and leadership training, a lot of this stuff applies to the personal. So I think this is a great segue to talk through. To me, it's no different than, I've been married to my wife, Laura. It'll be 20 years on June 24th. And with that, like, we've got expectations, talking. And some days I'm good at it, Rafa, and other days I'm not as good. Actually, Laura's like, I wish you would, do the same thing you do for business as you do at home. But again, I sometimes I'm human. And again, if I'm stressed, I know I can be myself around her. She loves me. And again, like that's, I have a little bit of a comfort zone. But even with like family, like, and Jim Rohn talks about this best, who's a motivational speaker. There's people you're going to want to, associate more with, people you're going to associate the same with, and people you're going to associate less with. And there's people in my life that I no longer associate with. It doesn't mean they're bad people. It's just that we're in a different place in life, right?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to sound like I'm cocky or I'm too good or they can't be around me. But like, Rafa, I haven't drank in 2 years. Not that I don't hang around people that drink, but like, I don't need to go to the bar every night and hang out. Like I can do other things that are more productive with my time. And I can not, again, I'm friends with a lot of people that drink. Again, I have nothing against it. So I want to be very clear with that. And I'm not trying to sound high and mighty or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, you find people that are where you're at and where you're trying to go and how do you grow with them. So I think, again, just like, but again, some of this is about being vulnerable and sharing where you're at. I don't know about your family dynamic, but again, I have a great family. We get along really well. Sometimes my sister and I butt heads, like she's kind of the favorite, and that's fine. Like, it doesn't bother me and I don't have any resentment towards her. But with that, like, her expectations are much different than mine. And I know that I'm probably always going to disappoint her, but I do everything I can to be above that. And I always try to be transparent with where I'm feeling. And so again, if we communicate and even have to give tough news, Rafa, like Simon Sinek's a leadership author that I love, and he has a lot of great content out there. But Simon talks about when you got to have a difficult conversation or something that might not be received well, ask the person, is this an okay time to have this conversation? I've got to share some things that are a little bit difficult for me right now. Are you okay with that? And if you know that person, whether it's a family member, a friend, or even somebody in the business world, you should have a relationship where you kind of know that person. And you should know kind of, are things okay, or someone having a bad day. And then maybe it's not the right time to approach that. And if that person gives you permission and says, yeah, I'm okay to receive the information, you still got to talk to people with tact and diplomacy. I'll give you a great example of what I did wrong with my son. So my wife, Laura, and I have a son, Alexander. He's 19. He graduated from high school last year in May and got his associate's degree in December. He did some like college credit plus things here in Ohio, and he started his own business. He's doing like mobile detailing, exterior, interior, got certified to do paint correction and also to do ceramic coating. And I've been telling him since December, I'm like, I'm going to sit down and do planning with you. Well, Father of the Year, like I screwed up. I didn't have time. I pour everything into typically my clients and not always everything into myself or to my family. And so with that, like we finally sat down last week and we did his business planning. Great. Then he's like, Dad, I want to look at my website. So I looked at his website and my wife wasn't home at the time. I'm talking to my son. I said, before I sit down with you, do I have your permission to be very direct with you? And he said, sure, Dad. Like, I understand. Like, I said, I'm going to give you some tough love. Are you okay with that? He said, yes. So I'm having this conversation with Alexander. My wife, Laura, walks in. I said, Alexander, I said, your website is garbage. I said, it looks like a sixth grader wrote it. I said, you need to improve that immediately. My wife walks in and she goes, Scott, like that was horrible. Where's your tact and diplomacy? So again, some of it is knowing your audience and knowing who you're talking to. Again, what's the relationship like? My son didn't feel bad. He didn't feel like I was beating him up. We already had the open conversation about, is it okay if I'm direct with him? He said, sure. Could I have phrased it a little bit differently? Yes. I've got a great relationship with our son and with my son, Alexander. So I'm like, and I made a joke after it. He's like, no, Dad, I'm cool, because I always want to make sure that like I'm not belittling him or berating him, but I want him to know like I care about him and I want the best for him. And so I was trying to tell him like what he did on his website was not good enough and he needed to raise the bar. So we were just talking through that. So those are some personal examples I can share in the personal.
Dude, I absolutely love where this conversation went, because it just taught me something completely different that I can't, like, again, I learn something new every time I have these conversations with people. And I mean, dude, like, this is fantastic because, my entire thinking of like, if I don't want to set expectations to not be disappointed, it just means that I'm not having the right conversations at the right time with the right people, or talking about how we should be doing things. So I'll give you the perfect example. I just read a book called The Next Conversation that teaches you how to communicate better, right? Just to have these conversations exactly like I'm telling you now. And it doesn't necessarily mean I have to set an expectation for somebody because I'm expecting something, but I need to have the conversation that states, look, if we're doing this, maybe we should talk about it in this direction. And it's funny because hopefully she doesn't get mad at me bringing this up publicly, but I just had a conversation with Lorena, and, she sends me this message and she was like, I was a little scared to talk to you about this because, sometimes it goes in a different direction. Funny enough, dude, I typed in the exact same thing in a conversation where I was going to tell her something that I'm like, how do I bring this up? We're both sending the exact same thing. And I'm like, listen, the biggest problem that we're actually really having is we're afraid to communicate with each other openly. And maybe we should solve that problem before we address anything else that's happening.
You're not alone. You're not alone, because people, we're afraid of what's potentially there. And so that fear prohibits us from having the conversation. It doesn't have to be negative. Again, I gave a pretty rough example with my son about 6th grade level, but I mean, we don't have to be that harsh. We got to know the person. Are they more sensitive? Are they going to handle the information well? We can say, like you just said, like, hey, Lorena, I got to have this conversation with you. And like, I love that she said I'm a little scared to even have it. Like, that to me showed vulnerability. That should hopefully take down your guard a little bit. So you don't approach it the wrong way. You know what I mean? So like, it gave you permission almost to be able to react a little bit differently. When you're blindsided by something, because this happens a lot in relationships, it happens a lot in the business world. We don't communicate or even share our feelings or our thoughts. People think it's like lovey-dovey or like just too much personal. But guess what? Personal comes into the workplace as well. So I think we got to do those things every single day, whether it's personal or professional.
Yeah, dude, I'm with you 100%. I didn't end up sending her the message I was going to send her. I kid you not, it was the exact same sentence written out. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, I pride myself on being able to have conversations with people, no matter how vulnerable the conversation could be. And when I first started dating her and going out with her, I always had that over and over with her. I'd be like, hey, whenever something's happening, I need you to communicate with me. Be open about it. I don't care what it is. And over time, I guess you kind of do forget about it, right? Like you said, you do things in business and then you forget about them on a personal level. We're all humans. We go through stages. But I really like that, man. I'm glad we transitioned a little bit into the personal side of things. I'll tell you about the software that actually runs my business. Hospitable. I run properties in a few different markets and I do it all remotely. I'm not pulling that off without one place holding everything together. All your calendars sync in real time. Airbnb, Vrbo, Booking.com, Google, your direct booking site, all of it talking to each other in real time. So you don't get double booked. And if that's ever happened to you, you know how bad it is. Refunds, bad reviews, lost reservations, it's a pain in the butt. Hospitable's new dynamic pricing is built right in it now. It updates your rates every day off the market and pushes them out everywhere for you. And you can do markups per OTA. You're not touching it once. You just have to oversee it every now and then to make sure it's correct. You can even build your own direct booking website on the platform and get you on Google so that you can take bookings without giving up those OTA fees. We all know about the 15.5% fee. And the operation side is honestly my favorite part. It assigns your cleaners around every booking. You pay them right there in the app and it spits out a new door code for every single guest. And my favorite part is their newest addition, the upsells. We've made about $450 this week on upselling early check-ins, late checkouts, and entertainment packages. Something like 300,000 operators run on Hospitable at the moment. If you're scaling and you're downsizing your tabs and don't want to do more work, you should definitely check out Hospitable. Links in the description. Man, I wish we had more time. We're about 46 minutes, but I have a ton of questions for you. I want to keep going over the cultures and value and the team building, but I want to talk about more of a personal level in you, like, because you talk about how you're really faith based and how you bring that into the workplace and how you handle things. So how does your faith shape how you advise owners in their business, but specifically on when they're firing someone? Because that's a big, like, oh man, you're really dealing with someone's like livelihood. Now, there's reasons why people got to get fired from time to time as business owners will understand that. Based around that, like, how do you address these type of situations?
Yeah. So, I mean, to me, I always try to put myself in their shoes, right? Again, kind of treat people the way I want to be treated if I was going through that, kind of the golden rule. I've volunteered, Rafa, for 20 years now, 21 years actually, in youth ministry. And I've learned a ton, with that about how to deal with people and also to communicate and to do things the right way versus the wrong way. And so, I practice that out. Again, not every organization is a faith-based organization. That's okay. Like, you can be whatever you are, but I
Right.
try to approach it with putting myself in their shoes, being empathetic. Again, if you're going to let somebody go, in my humble opinion, you need to make sure there's documentation. Have you given them performance corrective disciplines, verbal warnings, written warnings that are documented, that the team member signed off on, that you've signed off on? If it gets bad enough, have you done performance improvement plans? It should never, ever, ever come as a shock that you're letting somebody go, unless it's a layoff because of business conditions. You lost a big client, you lost a big job, and you have to, downsize. Then it might be a surprise to somebody. But anytime you let somebody go for performance issues, Rafa, and you didn't document it, they've already got the wall up. They're upset. They're yelling. You get into potential litigation stuff, you get into threats. So we have to avoid that as business owners. We got to treat them as human beings. To your point about the livelihood, I take it personally as a business owner. I'm responsible for not only for my team members, but I'm responsible for their families.
Yeah.
Right. So when I hire somebody, how am I pouring into them? How am I giving them everything I can as a business owner and as a person to help lift them up, to help them meet their goals so that they're successful? If I do that, and if I communicate the expectations and I give them the training and the tools and the resources to do their job, I treat them well with saying please and thank you, they're still not performing, it makes it a lot easier to have to do the terminations, right? If it comes to that. But again, there's got to be those constant conversations. You can't be upset with somebody, write them up, put them in like a personnel file, but never have them sign off on it. They don't even know what they did. And then you got to be really timely too. A lot of business owners, they'll be upset about something that happened a month ago and they want to write somebody up. That's too long. Like if it happens, you see something, you say something, you document it, and then you have the conversation and you move on. Too many times we're not doing those things, Rafa, and then we're putting surprises in place, and that's where people get upset.
Would you amount that to leadership? I mean, I kind of feel like, we'd have to kind of understand that by being leaders and being able to do or lead the right way.
Yeah, 100%. It's leadership, and it's also, again, it goes back to setting people up for success. It goes back to setting the expectations. How do you onboard? How do you train? What knowledge does that person have? If we didn't do those things, to me, we can be upset with the employer, the team member all day long, but we also should be upset with ourselves. So, and again, are we doing regular coaching? I'm a huge proponent of one-on-one meetings, minimum once a month with every team member, minimum. And that's not a write-up where you're having someone sign off on it, but you're getting input, Rafa. How are they doing personally? How are they doing professionally? People come to work and somebody might be in their family going through cancer and they've never shared that with you. You might find that out and you can see their performance has declined. You might be then able to be a little bit more empathetic with them and work with them. Or how can you support them? How can you divide and conquer? So there's a different way that we can treat people. And I think that goes back to, again, being Christ-like and treating people the way, Jesus would, as far as, that's how my faith comes into play. If it's a faith-based organization I work with a couple of them, we'll pray before we have to have a difficult conversation. Right.
Okay.
So that's a cool thing that you don't always get to do. But a lot of it is leading by example. And a lot of it is, treating people with dignity and respect the way I would want to be treated if I was in that situation.
Yeah, I love that, dude. I mean, it really comes down to two things, right? Just be a good human being.
Amen.
Treat people the right way. We're running out of time, but really quick, give a few tips or tricks where people can learn to become better leaders, to be able to implement these type of things you've been talking about and actually be able to do this at the right way, at the right level.
Yeah, I mean, invest in your development. Leadership is a daily thing. How do I learn something new each day? When we do leadership trainings, Rafa, we tell people to put this proverbial tool belt on, right? And if you know me personally, I know nothing about being a mechanical person. I can't do a hammer real well or anything like that. But I want you to put this proverbial tool belt on. I want you to put one thing you learn every day into that tool belt. And when you have a situation or something that arises, how do you use that when you pull out the right tool? So to me, that's important. I think, the power of groups and masterminds, I think that's huge. It's relationship capital. It's who do you know? You don't have to know everything, right? There are other people that are experts that you can rely on and use. But you also have to be willing to say, I don't know everything, and I'm going to be okay with asking for help. Too many times people got egos and pride, and they let that get in the way. So how do we become more vulnerable? How do we, again, ask for help? And how do we have the right people in our corners to really help us take the next step? And then the other thing would be your team. It doesn't have to be you. Business in life is a team sport. You don't have to have all the answers, again, even with that. So how do you, again, empower the team? How do you train the team? How do you do the things that make you a better leader? How do you support them? How do you make them feel heard, seen, cared for, and value. If I'm doing those things, they're going to go tell everybody else why this is a great place to work. Your pipeline of talent's going to be full. It's going to give you a competitive advantage. You're going to have long-term tenured people. You're not going to have constant churn or turnover. You're not going to have the chaos in the business. So it really comes down to how do you lead and how do you help people?
Yeah, I mean, dude, everything you're saying, when I put it all together, be vulnerable, have ownership of everything.
Yeah.
Be a team builder and be a team leader and take care of your team and surround yourself with people that are just better than you, that will make you be better. I think those are all traits of a really good leader. And if you tie it all together in a way where you can pass that on to your team and they really pick up on it, I think it could really just take people to the next level, man. And I appreciate you sharing that. All right. So, again, I talk about this at the end, what my takeaways are from the episode. I mean, you give me some really good ones, right? The culture and values and talking about it on social media and bringing in the team and involving them with the mission and the vision. And what's the why of the company and what's the business long term. That was one of that I thought I was going to go. And then the 3 solutions to every problem is a huge one. But I still think that the best thing I took from this episode, dude, I mean, don't get me wrong. I tell this I do this at every episode, but everything was an awesome episode. But the fact that people live up and live down to expectations to me was huge. I mean, we ended up talking a big segment of that on the episode just because of the way we lead, the things that we expect, the expectations that we set, the conversations that we're having. The being vulnerable, the taking ownership of the issues. Again, it all ties together to having a good culture and creating values as a team for the team. And I mean, this is great. I had a million questions about org charts, onboarding that we didn't even get to touch, dude. So, I mean, we might have to do another episode, man. We might have to do another episode.
I would be honored and happy to help in any way I can, Rafa, to add value. I would leave you with one more golden nugget. And by the way, you're amazing at social media. Like
I appreciate that.
I suck at it. That's not me. Like this is why I love podcasts, because I don't have to like post anything. Other people do it and I just share the content. So I'll make sure I share your stuff. Well, the last nugget I'll leave you and your listeners with is what you permit as a leader is what you promote. I'm going to say it again. What you permit is what you promote. So if you permit mediocrity, if you don't give clear expectations, you're allowing people to fail. If you don't, again, hire the right people and don't take accountability, you own that. So what you permit is what you promote. And that's not something I said. Somebody told me that a long time ago. And it's something I live in and breathe by is what you permit is what you promote. Because what happens, Rafa, other team members that are high performers, which is a whole other thing we could talk about. When they're high performers, they see the people that are not performing. And when you don't address those things or talk about them because you're afraid to have the conversations, they're getting upset. And you may lose good team members because you're not addressing the situations.
Yeah,
you can't push it under a rug. You got to talk about it.
Dude, this is so good. I mean, that probably might be even better than the expectation deal, because people get mistreated because they allow it. People get ignored because they allow it, right?
That's right.
What you permit is what you promote is fantastic. I'm so glad that you shared that, dude. Gosh darn it, I'm telling you, we're going to have another episode. This is really good. Let me ask you a question really quick.
Yeah.
And it's something I'm doing now going into these episodes because AI is such a big thing. So I'm asking, usually I'll ask, like, you're the first person I'm actually going to ask this, and I've been thinking about it a while, but I want to ask, like, how is AI changing your business? But the exact question I want to ask you is, with everybody and the listeners being, small operators, I don't think hopefully I have some big time listeners out there, but where should small operators use AI in HR and where they shouldn't use it, as opposed to the normal, how is AI disrupting your business? I want to know exactly a granular detail.
I think AI is a tool. To me, it's not always 100% accurate.
Oh, no, absolutely
especially if you put a lot of detail on there. You got to be careful with confidentiality from a compliance standpoint, especially if you're using like free versions where everybody has access to it. To me, and I'm going to go off on a quick tangent here, Rafa.
Please
AI,
do.
I think, again, is great. And I think we use it in some of our businesses with like helping, create some job descriptions. That's a very practical way, like to define job duties. We also use it if we've got a bunch of meetings. How do we summarize that and come up with clear action items? So that's another practical way. But my biggest fear with AI, and I'm seeing it translate into what I do with clients, is people can't have conversations like this. They can't think quickly on their feet. They don't know how to critically think without putting something into AI. So that's happening more and more. So I'm going to say this is probably a bold statement, and I'm not trying to cast like negativity, but I think it's going to make the human society dumber. I really believe that, because we're not going to be able to think critically. We're not going to be able to have these conversations. So we should use it as a tool, but I'm sure you've seen it. People will use AI in business. How do I reply to this email? That's not a bad thing. Maybe you draft it first. You have them like go through and say, help make this a little bit more professional sounding. That's okay. Make sure you take the M-dash pauses out. Make sure you take the emojis out. Like you can tell typically when somebody writes an AI, especially if it's not your tone.
For sure.
Even if you train AI to like to your voice and those kind of things, like that's good. But make sure it makes sense before you just hit send. I've gotten many emails, I don't know about you, from other colleagues in HR. They ask a question. They may not be completely right. They may have not explained the situation correctly. There's other variables that happen, and that can give bad HR advice. Yeah. So again, whether it's us or someone else, you should always be talking to people, making sure you're doing the right stuff. And then with anything in life, Rafa, you got to take action. If you don't implement something, like that's on you. Like I can't do it for you.
You know, something you said that I want to touch on really quickly. You know, the amount of AI slop nonsense that I've received is just ridiculous. Mm-hmm. You know, the little line, what's it called? That little dash? M-dash. Yeah, that thing. Oh my God. If I see those in the messages, I'm like, you 100% had AI write this. You know what I mean? And then it's like, it doesn't make sense in some, or like, here's what really matters, right? It's like, dude, nobody says that in their written conversations. One of the things I always tell people to do is talk to it, say everything you need to say, and then ask it to rewrite it so it sounds professional or it sounds casual, whatever. But don't have it, here's what I want, and go ahead and have at it, and then have it come up with whatever it thinks it needs to be drafting to send to you. I took it a step further. So I actually took that book that I just told you about, the next conversation, and I actually did this on a business level as well. And I created a project on Claude. I'm going to just touch on it really quickly so you get this idea. You might be able to implement it in some way or another. But I took the next conversation book and I read it, obviously, and I put it into Claude and I said, hey, take the principles from this book, everything it teaches on how to communicate better, right? And I tied it with a couple leadership books. And I put it into created a project with all those principles. And I said, I want you to save this in your memory. So in case I ever have questions on how to rewrite things in a proper, right way, you know, you can help me with it. And now anytime I need to communicate with someone like a team member, I actually uploaded my entire culture and values through a project in Claude. So whenever I need to respond to someone based on our culture and values, it actually gives me the correct response. Now, granted, again, I draft up the message how I think I'm going to send it. And I go, this is probably going to sound incorrect, or I'm going to piss somebody off. Tonality means it's very different on a message. So I put it in there. I go, can you please help me rewrite this so it makes sense? And then I still proofread it. And then I remove some of the crap that's in there that shouldn't be on there, and some of the nonsense. And then I clean it up. But it comes as a very solid response based on certain principles that I agree with.
I think that's exactly how we should be using it, right? Again, it's a good tool. It's a good resource. No different than when the internet started, back, it became more popular. So again, I think we have to embrace it, but I think we can't rely solely on it. That's just my opinion. And again, Claude's great. There's a lot of great platforms that are out there.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many, but man, we can talk about this forever. Scott, how can people get a hold of you? Where can they reach out? I mean, I'm sure there are going to be questions. I'm sure people are going to want help getting their team up and building culture and values and org charts and just kind of, getting things off their plate. How can they get a hold of you? How can they reach out? What's the best way to look you up?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram or on Facebook or LinkedIn, but also you could go to our website, fortitudehrsolutions.com, and there's a contact page where you can email the info thing, and myself or my assistant will reach out to schedule a time so we can talk and try to help in any way we can.
This has been an absolute pleasure. I mean, you taught me some serious stuff here, man. The last episode, I was like, one of the best episodes I've ever had. But I got to tell you, I think I'm huge on leadership and team and ownership and all this stuff. And the vision, I think is so important. Dude, this has to be one of my favorite episodes I've ever recorded. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your knowledge, dude. Thank you very much.
I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you and your listeners. And if I can help in any way or add value to you or your members or listeners, please let me know.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate you, man.
Thank you as well. Appreciate it, Rafa.
Real quick, can we take a second? Do me a favor. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't yet. I know every channel says this, but it really does matter. When you like and subscribe, it tells the algorithm to push this to more operators who need it. 2 seconds for you, and it gets me in front of the next person trying to figure this stuff out. And if you want to take it a step further, hit the share button and send it to someone you think can benefit from this conversation. And for real, you're spending your time with me, and that means the world. I love you guys.